Hey everyone, what's going on? I just wanted to do another video, a follow-up to my last Star Trek video about Star Trek Discovery, and I also wanted to do a follow-up to kind of respond to Trek Yards and to a lot of the other Screen Junkies and a lot of the other people who are commenting about this on YouTube. So I thought it was worthwhile to add something to this discussion. So, after watching a few new episodes of Screen Junkies, Trek Yard Podcast, Nerdist, Irish Trekkie, etc., and a few others with more updates about Star Trek Discovery and feedback from their prospective audiences, it appears that, lo and behold, there is actually a lot of hate out there for Star Trek Discovery coming from fans online, and enough that various YouTubers have felt it necessary to address. So if you take a short glance at their comment sections under all the videos that are in this context, you'll notice that you'll see most people saying yes, Star Trek Discovery and CBS deserve the hate that they are getting, while most of the talking heads on YouTube are saying that they should not hate it and that they should be excited and reserve judgment, and that they are both right and wrong at the same time. So I just want to go into this at the beginning. Yes, I do feel like the fans themselves and the commenters are being extra critical about Star Trek and about this series, and although I am one of those people who's been posting content being very critical of it, I'm not one of those people who's like full on, let's boycott it, let's not do anything with it, let's try and force them to cancel the project. I still want to see what they have to come up with, but they definitely need to do a better job of listening to the fans and actually respecting the content that they're dealing with, that they've paid so many millions of dollars to have ownership of, but yet they seem so uninterested in actually using the content to its full potential, the Star Trek content licenses that they've accumulated. So I want to begin on a positive note before I totally tear into their arguments that have been presented by other YouTubers. They are right to say that we should actually see the project before we totally dismiss it and suspend judgment, because we really haven't seen what they have yet. So trailers is great, but it's not enough to go on, unfortunately, in its entirety. But just enough that we can be objective and say that we haven't seen the real project, only trailers and concept art. So we should really wait and see. I would not be in support of a boycott. I will be watching Discovery when it airs, and that will give us some real evidence to talk about. So because of this right now, it's mostly speculation. The success of Discovery does have something to do with the future of Star Trek shows, and I think that is 100% true. And projects in general, since this is the first time we've got a new Star Trek series in TV format since Enterprise. So this does matter in terms of the future of Star Trek and of the current projects that may or may not be in the pipeline. We, as real Star Trek fans, should give them the benefit of the doubt, since we don't actually have enough real evidence to say what's going on. But I do think that there's some element of this that it's important for criticism. So criticism has its place, but extreme skepticism and hate, I mean, then you're just not a Star Trek fan. If you just hate Star Trek and you hate everything that they have to say about it, then why are you even commenting on it, I guess, to a certain degree, or why are you going into depth on this kind of stuff? Because I actually like Star Trek, that's why I'm spending so much time on it. In terms of what I thought the other YouTubers and commentators have been saying, and a lot of the news personalities, I think a lot of people are just going easy on Star Trek producers and the owners at this point. And yes, I know it's just a science fiction show, but these people, like CBS and the people that have inherited Star Trek, are the inheritors of this legacy of a great story. And evidence has shown that the creative universe that exists, which was created by Gene Roddenberry, is very profitable, smart, entertaining, all of the above. And in one way, it can be, if it can be done correctly, it can actually create extremely great material, and it was really responsible for raising generations of curious kids who loved science and wanted to explore the fictional galaxy that they created. But it also pushed them to be scientists, to be interested in a lot of different things, chemistry, like whatever the case may be. Yes, it is true, like they said on Trek Yards podcast, that people hated Star Trek The Next Generation, DS9, Voyager, and Enterprise respectively, because they all deviated from the core Kirk and Spock story in new and different ways, which for a very hardcore audience of diehard fans really enjoyed and found it to be the best representation of how they wanted Star Trek to be. And they thought that it was different from other science fiction shows, and it was really early coming out. So in the TV world, So there was a lot of things that differentiated Star Trek and created this fan base that it has now. And those things are being stripped away slowly. There is a lot of pressure being put on the producers and the writers and the directors of Star Trek Discovery, just as there was massive pressure on J.J. Abrams to do justice to the Star Trek Beyond and Star Trek Into Darkness reboots, because they are a big deal to fans and people who financially dump millions into these projects in order to please fans, create new art, and profit and make further projects. The pressure is both natural and difficult to deal with, which was something which the producers knew would happen, but seems to be totally oblivious to all the negative. They seem to be totally oblivious to all the negative fan coverage and the negative press and critical opinions that are being expressed both online and in news and public conversations. There's also a lot of pressure to make an authentic Star Trek looking and sounding story, which should feel like they've done right by all the canon material and then expanded universe material and the original content they have to go on. And are clearly many things which differentiate Star Trek from other science fiction stories, and that's what's under attack to some degree. Fans over and over again in the comments section, every video, including mine, all address the fact that we don't want more reboots or prequels. We want to see something that takes place after Star Trek Voyager, where there's so much creative freedom and the advanced modern technology upgrades, graphics, uniforms, etc. would fit right in. What really matters is that those things which really make Star Trek original and innovative were the space exploration, philosophical and ethical dilemmas, and above all, futurism, aliens, and a rich world with content that these studios and J.J. Abrams are guilty of trying to erase in order to make Star Trek more appealing to an audience of non-Star Trek fans. YouTubers are pointing out every problem that they could pick out of the trailers and released material for Star Trek Discovery, plus so many more that I couldn't even begin to say that there was something wrong with it, which I totally missed because they're a lot more observant than me and a lot more knowledgeable about the specifics and nuances of Star Trek. However, all these YouTubers at the end of the day seem to be scared of attempting to hypothesize about what all of this means in total, and where the franchise itself is going and where it's being taken, and if these are smart moves that are being made to maximize profit and create the best content possible using the licenses they possess. So at the end of the day, I want to end this positive portion of it and say, yes, I will be watching it with everyone else, and I hope that I'm wrong, and I hope that these ideas that I'm saying are just, being overly critical, and that these ideas are somehow helping to contribute to the overall production development and the information from the fans that are being given so that they can make better choices at the end. Now it's on to the criticism portion. So, this is my real question. Are we witnessing the death of Star Trek as we know it? This topic has been brought up briefly in the Trek Yards podcast, but not really in those words, since this is just my opinion, and people don't want to say what's real, or they are scared or get in trouble or to get blacklisted by CBS or other Star Trek corporations or companies that are involved. Other bigger players, or in real life, people might get upset if we try and throw a wrench into the corporate gears. It's possible, considering the dismal failures of J.J. Abrams' Star Trek Beyond and Into Darkness reboot in the box office, and the lukewarm reception the Kelvin timeline got from fans. It's totally possible that we may be witnessing the last Star Trek program ever, since studios and producers would probably be looking at the numbers, and it wouldn't be profitable for them to make another financial loss if they continue on the path that they're going right now and ignore fans completely. If Discovery doesn't do well, and they are arguably taking so many unnecessary risks with the direction that they want to take with this new show, refusing to admit it's a reboot or really do any original groundbreaking ideas in a new timeline, and it could really turn out badly for the future of Star Trek. I haven't heard many people go into detail about the risks involved in the precarious position Star Trek has been for the last 20 years. Could it be in jeopardy if they keep disrespecting the fans like this and trying to pander to a general audience that isn't familiar with Star Trek, but might end up watching a nondescript science fiction action movie with Star Trek slapped on in order to garner extra attention without actually deserving it? They besmirched Star Trek's good name by producing cringeworthy content masquerading as Star Trek story, covered in Delta insignias. And I wanted to add that if it's true that the massive amount of negative feedback from fans towards Star Trek Discovery can potentially destroy it, as the Trek Yards guy said when he said, we may actually end up destroying Star Trek being so critical and not supporting them, which I actually agree with to some degree. I agree that it's not, but fans are not solely to blame and you shouldn't put it on our shoulders, because it doesn't just rest on our shoulders. It also rests on the producers and the owners of Star Trek, who actually have a lot more say and who have the final say in the decision making where Star Trek is headed. It's a combination of fan support and a great story, which are both needed in order to sustain the franchise and a loyal fan base. Because I get that most YouTubers don't want to talk bad about their favorite hobbies or their favorite show or big corporate entities, because they might get into trouble or lose sponsorships or something like that, or not get interviews. But at the end of the day, if we give too many negative interviews, it could have a bad effect. But it would be a shame if Star Trek was doomed by fans not standing up and voting with their dollars for the kind of Star Trek they want to see in the box office. And the box office itself has demonstrated that the shows that they're picking are bad options. They're bad choices. They're not good. They're not coming out well monetarily speaking, and they're not doing well financially, and they're not doing well with the fans. So I don't know who they're trying to please. It's already said. What they're trying to do is they're trying to erase every aspect of Star Trek that actually made it original. So because those things are the things that are actually preventing a much larger mass audience of people from consuming the content, because a lot of Star Trek fans are older people that watch the original, or they're young people that just appreciate a lot of complicated science content along with their science fiction, not just shoot 'em up, bang bang, car chases. And so it would be really unfortunate if Star Trek fans actually ended up killing Star Trek by not speaking up rather than by speaking up. So instead of silencing the fans for the sake of the producers and the owners, I should say we should both have a say, rather than it just being the studio producers saying, nope, we don't care what the fans have to say, we're going to market this to a larger audience that actually isn't Star Trek fans. That's a mistake, and that's exactly what they're doing. So, I think that Star Trek could be killed by its fans' negative reviews, but it also could be stopped in its tracks by a studio and producers who are incapable of putting their egos, greed, and narcissism aside and realize that they are also responsible for how this show goes. And it really shouldn't be that difficult to avoid pissing off that many fans as they can, while trying to pander to people who actually don't like Star Trek at all and would never have, but they might actually watch this movie if they remove everything which made Star Trek original and authentic to begin with, in order to attract this new fan who actually doesn't care about Star Trek and avoids everything that it stands for. What's more important, creating a program that vaguely resembles Star Trek, which studios can pander to special interests and profit from, but never truly contribute to the Star Trek universe or a creation of more Star Treks? Or do the right thing and give fans what they want and be celebrated for saving Star Trek and not gambling with its future, in the hopes that people who love Star Trek would overlook its numerous flaws, and those who hate Star Trek can enjoy it because they actually hate Star Trek, and this project barely resembles any kind of Star Trek. And the reality is that you can admit that the movies that are coming out, they're less and less incrementally like any kind of Star Trek content that we've seen in the past. So it's becoming less a Star Trek. It's just covered in deltas basically now, and that's all it is. In the end, I guess, since the rant's over, I just want to make it clear to people that they need to go see the CBS Star Trek show just to give it a chance when it airs, and I fully support them in their attempt, and I'm excited to see what they have ready for us. And anyone who's honest and willing to be objective about how good or bad the content actually is should go see it before they give a final word. However, this doesn't let us forget that if Star Trek is mishandled by its owners, which has nothing to do with fans' opinions about it, this could also spell out the end of any chance of going where no one has gone before, maybe even in our lifetimes, if there is no corporate money behind a project due to a lack of recent successes. The studios have sued the fans into submission, and YouTubers and commentators are too scared or oblivious to the fact that Discovery is gambling with the future of Star Trek, and they haven't tried to make it easy for themselves. In fact, it's been quite the opposite, with all this disrespect towards fans and canon. Blaming fans for not being positive enough, as if it would be enough, as if their positivity would be enough for success, and not their not creating good content, and our fault alone for being too critical and fighting too hard to make sure the canon and existing stories are respected or at least acknowledged. We are, at the very least, we are spectators for this performance, and we have to play our part. But if corporate and the producers refuse to submit good, well thought out, well researched content, we can hardly blame ourselves for pointing that out. We need to be free to call for the kind of Star Trek we want to be made. And they have the right to experiment with these new formulas and characters and plots. So I think it's okay to do these new experiments in shows because they do have the rights to do it, both metaphorically and literally. They do have the rights for it. And so I think it's okay to do these new experimental shows, but in between those, they need to throw us some fans, some satisfying content, which actually looks like a Star Trek-worthy show, and which can actually satisfy us and actually take on the mantle that Gene Roddenberry left over, which was the masterpiece of the science fiction community, which is Star Trek, because it's been around for so long and it's inspired so many other creators. So I just want to say at the end of the day, I do understand why people are being critical. And I understand from one side, and I understand why people like in Trek Yards where they're saying, yeah, your fans are actually destroying the future of Star Trek because you're refusing to support them. But supporting them is not necessarily a good idea, because if they're providing us with content that is terrible, we're not just going to accept it just because they slap a Star Trek label on it. So this goes both ways. This is both a combination of fans and it's a combination of good production. So this needs to take place on both ends. There needs to be a genuine commitment to good content. Anyways, have a good day.